Hey YouTube, this is Brian from Whiskey Library.
And this is Sniff from... I am Sniff from ScotchNSniff. And today we're going to be interviewing the Whiskey Library. Granted, it's just half, 1/3?
Just me.
1/3-ish of Whiskey
Well,
Library.
I mean, Tim's only like 8 or 9 inches taller than me.
Yeah, so that's... Oh, we're going by height?
Oh, what
purely?
were you doing?
If we're going by height, I mean you're 30% of Whiskey Library. Anyway, so we're interviewing...
We're going to get out the topic way
I'm going to
fast.
get beat up today. We're going to interview the Whiskey Library, just ask them a couple of questions. So this, because they're Instagrammers like yours truly, we're not going to get into the same kind of questions that we got into with the brand ambassadors that we do when we do brand ambassador interviews. I'm just going to ask you some questions. I don't know how it's going to go, honestly. So,
Okay.
You guys out on Instagram, why?
So we originally got out on Instagram to promote our events. So we did a lot of whiskey events when we kind of formed the company. That was one of the real reasons why we formed the Whiskey Library, was to get out into the DC area and do whiskey events and educate people. So we did, and we still do, whiskey education classes at various bars and restaurants that we partner with. We do private whiskey dinners. We try to do some public ticketed events where we do dinner pairings, where we let chefs kind of create some awesome dinners and appetizers and desserts that we then pair with whiskey. It's hard work, sitting down with a chef
and tasting all that good food.
Tasting their food and tasting good whiskey and trying to determine which one is going to be in the lineup for that evening or the evening coming up is hard. But so we got into Instagram and social media really just to kind of spread the word about our events and to kind of encourage people to come out and know more about us. And then that's how we got into it.
Fantastic. Did you guys already know there was a Whiskey Library, like in Oregon?
So
they claim to be the biggest whiskey library on the West Coast. So they're essentially like a smaller Jack Rose.
Right. So when Tim and I have known each other since Tim's the other half of the Whiskey Library. Tim and I have known each other since, I guess, 7th grade. And when we found ourselves back here in the DC area, we both had a passion for whiskey, and we thought of opening a bar. And so we did a little bit of research. And by a little bit, I mean we went to one bar that we had just heard opened up. We walked in, and I realized that Bill Thomas had kind of beat us to the punch of kind of what my vision would have been.
Jack Rose.
Right, Jack Rose.
Bars on
so
lock.
I was like, okay, so we got to do something different. And it was always going to be about education. It was always going to be about sharing our passion for whiskey. And so we figured if Jack Rose is the Mecca where everyone will come to, let's bring Mecca to you. And so let's bring the whiskey to you. And so that was kind of why we did what we did. When we had picked the name, the Whiskey Library, and it was through trying to find the name for our website that we stumbled
Discovered
upon
the other one.
So I don't want to say we knew about it first, but we did know about it before, incorporation and stuff. We knew it existed.
It's very cool. So not the Whiskey Library, but Whiskey Library DC.
Correct.
Totally different.
Yeah, and we're not trying to compete with them by any means. We're not going to open a bar. We're not doing any of that.
So library for you guys is less about having a collection of whiskeys and more about the knowledge about whiskey that you're bringing to people.
Correct. And that was always the idea behind the name. It was never about a whiskey collection or the catalog of whiskeys. It was really about the education component. Even when we came up with the name before we even were going to go out with a bar. The idea of the bar was having kind of like books about whiskey. The menu would be really detailed about what whiskeys you were having. It would be almost like a library setting of, you'd have quiet reading rooms for like private little areas.
That's actually kind of cool.
We had some pretty cool ideas going into it, but we'll see. Maybe one day.
Maybe still in the future.
Maybe one day, like if we ever do like an event space where we could really kind of take off, I think that would be something.
You really got me thinking. You should talk to Jack Rose about that, because if it's one thing to have a list of a ton of whiskeys on a thing, but if you just highlighted a few, and really talked about just a couple of them,
Well, we've done that with a couple different bars in town, where we've tried to help. I don't want to say curate their menu, but really take a look at what whiskeys they have, what whiskeys they may be missing in their lineup, to kind of fill some gaps,
give them some variety,
but then also to kind of really do some highlights every month for them of saying, hey, we should do this, we should do that, and we've written up descriptions for them.
That's very cool.
Again, not tasting notes, because tasting, I mean...
Right, everybody's
we've done
olfactory
that.
sense is very different.
Yeah, but we'll at least give the background, like the history behind the distillery, the history behind that whiskey, how that whiskey is made, why that specific whiskey is unique. That's what comes... Yeah, that's what we love.
Awesome. That's so awesome. So what is it you guys are planning to do in the future? Like, say, 5 years, 10 years down the road? Do you have an idea?
Well, so, I mean, I think we just figured out, right?
Because, well, you guys are buying a ton of single barrels. And it just makes me wonder, like, what is the end goal to this? It's one thing to just buy single barrels because you love whiskey. And
right.
People do it to the tune of $20,000, $30,000. But, like, where's this going?
So the single barrel project that we started, we're not... I don't want to say that we know exactly where it's going. I think we got into it for a variety of reasons. One, we were given the opportunity, and it's kind of like, how can you say no to a single cask of Kilchoman? Right? Like, when offered it, why not? Especially since Tim was already on his way to Scotland, or had plans to go to Scotland, and he was gracious enough to incorporate a side trip to Islay and visit the distillery. How could you say no? But we really were thinking of, how can we bring unique whiskeys to DC? So bars and retail stores do the same thing that we do. They buy a whole cask and they sell it. And they either sell it, with cocktails and pours, or they sell it by the bottle, and they try to go through the cask basically as fast as they can. I don't want to say that we don't want to sell all of ours as fast as we can, but our goal there was, how do we bring it to the whiskey community? Because there's also a lot of groups out there that do what we do. And there's 20, 30, 40 individuals that get together, and they go out and they buy a cask of whiskey, and then they each take a case or a couple bottles. And that's great. I mean, do that. If you have a resource in which you can do that, I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic experience. You're going to have whiskey that really sings to you. And it's so much fun. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody can either. One, there's not enough
20 people, 30 people
right,
around.
and there's not enough, and do it at enough of a scale to make it work.
Yeah.
There's also not enough single barrels around to have a million groups go out and do it.
That's true.
And then there's people that just don't want a case or two cases of whiskey every month of the same one.
I mean, there are options. There are whiskey clubs for people who do want to try a bunch of different ones.
Oh, absolutely. And so
group together.
Right. And we thought about that, and we didn't want to go out and say, hey, join, pay. It was like, look, come as you are. If you like it, have some more. If not, okay. But it was also a way in which we could ensure that there was a consistent group picking time after time after time. Yeah. So, yeah, we've picked peated Kilchoman. We've picked Elijah Craig, Jack Daniels. We've blended our own Whistle Pig. We've done some really fun projects. We've got Compass Box, Marion Cast coming out in September that we're really thrilled about.
Malted rye.
What?
Malted rye.
Yeah, just we'll get to that in a second. But the goal there was really, let's bring it into DC, partner with one retailer that's going to get a lot of the bottles to sell to individuals that want to bring it home, but then take advantage of the Wild West that is DC and our connections with doing these events and with the brands and with the distributors, and allow them to then split that barrel up and distribute the bottles to different bars. And so it's not just at one bar. It's at Jack Rose. It's at Bourbon. It's at Rebellion. It's at Civil Lounge. It's at Fiola Mar in that group, right?
Oh, wow.
Like, let everybody kind of stumble across it and taste it and share the whiskey. That was the goal of the Single Barrel Project, was how do we bring something unique to DC that the most people can get?
Yeah.
And so awesome. That was that project, which then led us to what you were hinting at, which is where we were huge fans of craft distilling, and one of the distilleries in DC that I think has been doing it really, really well is 1-8 Distilling.
1-8, definitely. They have so many interesting barrels that they put together and so many unique offerings. It's kind of hard not to like 1-8.
Right. I mean, they've done a great job and been very transparent in their Untitled series of finishing sourced whiskeys. They've come out with what started off as Rock Creek Rye and Rock Creek Bourbon is now District Made Bourbon and District Made.
The new bottles.
The new bottles, which are just fantastic. But in talking with them, we really wanted to try to develop something, again, unique that was an educational. And so Tim and I sat down and we said, what do we really want to try to distill? And so we worked with 1-8 and they let us come in and kind of take over for a couple days. And so we took over for a day and we distilled our own bourbon mash bill. So it's not their bourbon mash bill, it's ours. So it's completely different.
That's cool.
We also did a rye, which is different. And then we got together with a couple of our friends, Wally, and some others, and we went out and we did a single malted rye. And that is probably one of the whiskeys that I'm really looking forward to. So they let us pick the barrel size, 53 gallons for those, the char level, the mash bill, the entry proof. Yeah. I mean, all sorts of stuff. We really got to, and then we were there. We were there for we threw up all the bags of the grain into the mill. We milled it. We watched it ferment. We distilled it. We were tasting it off the still. We did the heads, the tails cut. Education, right? Yeah. And really doing that, I think, lends more credit to us to be able to talk about that process.
That's fun. That's awesome, because I mean that's a huge part of it. I think that a lot of enthusiasts get into is the actual process of how it all goes down. I think that's the whole reason we all go to Scotland is because we want to see it and we want to smell the malt houses and we want to smell the rick houses and like all the dunnages and just it's incredible there. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I'll ask Tim this right after I ask you, but sure. What's your absolute number one favorite whiskey of all time?
It's a great question.
That's a tough question. I didn't even give you a genre. I'm just like,
of all time. I genuinely don't think I could name a specific whiskey or a specific bottle or probably even a specific distillery. I mean, it's, the end of July here in DC where we haven't had a rain for like 3 weeks. So right now I'm kind of on a little bit of like malt kick. So I might be doing like some Glenfiddich. Might be doing, the Balvenie 14 Caribbean cask is just kind of singing to me right now. But then, give it 3 months and all of a sudden, it's the Lafroig 10 cask strength and it's Bruichladdich and it's...
How about this? Island bottle.
My favorite what?
Is that easier? Island bottle. Like, you can only have one bottle on an island. Like, what is it you're drinking?
So anybody who knows me knows that I do have a couple favorite distilleries. I think if I'm on an island, I mean, we're talking tropical. No.
You don't have a choice. Plain cash, you're the only one who lived.
I'll go Aaron 10 cask strength.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm a huge Aaron fanboy. Before I was coming over, I was looking at bottles to bring that I didn't think you had, and I realized that I have 17 unique expressions of Aaron.
Oh wow! I thought I was doing well at like half a dozen.
And so Tim was fortunate enough to just grab me a couple off auction lately to add to that. But yeah, I would say the Aaron 10 cask strength. It's just an all around. It's a great sipping whiskey. It comes in at a good under 50, or right around 50-ish if you're looking for a mystery bottle.
So this is always weird because he's off camera. But Tim, what's your island bottle?
I have an affinity for Bunnahabhain.
Oh, Bunna? Oh, okay.
So Bunnahabhain, a little under the radar for most people. But
it's tasty.
It's not one of the OBs. It's actually an IB that probably nobody else is ever going to be able to have, or I may never even be able to have again other than the, couple ounces that I have left. But it's a Dunvegan independent bottling, a 22-year, distilled in 1980, bottled in 2002. That is really just a stunning whiskey. It's got a very, very focused flavor, just kind of the typical lightly peated Bunna with some of the nice apricot and fruit flavors that tend to be one of their hallmarks. And it's really just very, very focused, but also it expands while it sits in your mouth, and that's one of the most enjoyable things about it.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Those are two. That's amazing. So you ask most people, I think, island bottles, and they're not going to go, they're not going to go Aaron. They're not going to go Bunna. It's going to be something, I think, a little more mainstream. I think most people would. So I think that's kind of cool that that's your guys'...
To allow me to continue to talk
on guys' jam.
We have always prided ourselves in being unbiased, not being focused on the mainstream, and introducing people to whiskeys that they had likely never heard of before. You ask them what they like. They say Macallan. You say, how about you try Glendronach? You say you like... you like Highland Park and you introduce them to something like maybe
Brook Lottie.
I don't know, Brook Lottie.
I would.
You know, so you try to expand people's comfort zones, expand their range, and because that's something that Brian and I have been able to do ourselves, and we feel very fortunate to have been able to do so, and we just want to bring it to them as the Whiskey Library.
Gives me a good idea.
Yeah. What's your idea?
Gives me a good idea for an episode.
Oh.
And then I'm doing it.
Well, I mean, and I think, to that point, we both did pick single malt scotches, but I think the two whiskeys that we picked are also complex enough that you can enjoy them no matter what is going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of my island bottle, is something that it doesn't matter whether it's 110 or 20 degrees outside. It doesn't matter whether you're happy, sad, experimental, whatever it is. It's just enjoyable, and it's a great go-to, and it's a great standard. And so I think that's the thing. But gosh, if I could bring a case of different bottles,
then life changes. Everything's different with a case. All right, so so that's the Whiskey Library. Nice. So in case if you guys have any questions for them, if you guys have seen them on Instagram, give them a follow, give them a likes, give them the comments, give them the engagements. So where can they find you on Instagram and social media?
Yeah, so Instagram, it's really simple now. It's just Whiskey Library DC. We used to have some underscores, no longer. We grew up or got younger, depending on
your perspective.
Your perspective. And then we've got a website, whiskeylibrarydc.com. So you can reach Tim at whiskeylibrarydc.com, or me, Brian, Brian, at whiskeylibrarydc.com.
Cool, sweet. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, reach out to them. Comment below. If you would like me to interview any other IGers, I know there are a number that people have suggested, so calm down. Believe me, I'll get around to it. But for now, we're starting with the Whiskey Library, and it should be good. So, so see you guys next time.
Next week?
Well, I guess I kind of do try to release the videos every week, so it is like next week.
Next week.
Friday, unless I'm at work and I
ScotchNSniff.
forgot. Ooh, that could be exciting. Next week on ScotchNSniff.
The Whiskey Library.
We sell tickets like kids just $10. What did I say? $10.
Well, not kids. We don't want.
Oh no kid. Maybe they can watch. It's just they won't be able to talk about anything. Like, what is a kid not going to know about whiskey? I mean, your kid will know things about whiskey, but they won't be able to talk about it to other kids because then you'll be in jail.
I mean, by kids you mean like the 21 to 25 year crowd. Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Are there other kids?
I don't know.
Are there people under 21?
No.